Well, hello everyone. You want to see my dongle? Just kidding. Absolutely no one asked for this film, but I'm going to do it anyway. I had a conversation the other day with a friend. He called me and he said, "Hey, I saw your latest notes on photography episode and I saw the image and it made me think I really wish I had shot that image." So he was basically paying me a compliment and saying he liked the photograph and wished that he had made it, which is cool. Very nice of him to do. And he said, "But I noticed something very different about your content on YouTube compared to a lot of other folks." He said, "So much of what you're doing is based around people and not things like random street photography where people may or may not know they're being photographed, or urban abstract landscapes void of people, or old buildings, old cars, old, West Texas signage, or like houses at night." And, by the way, if you're shooting houses at night, you better be careful because that's Todd Hido territory with house hunting, and that's like the best thing ever done on that. And so that's already out there. So I see people shooting like houses at night. And it makes me really nervous because that's sacred ground in my book, because Todd's book is so good and his project is so good and his work is so distinctive. So if you're copying that, it's very risky in my mind, unless your audience doesn't know who Todd Hido is. I digress. So I was like, oh, this kind of leads me in a way to making a film. And again, no one asked for this, but I'm doing it anyway because it's my channel. About the anatomy of a project and how something like that photograph would have come about. So I'm going to do a couple of things here. I'm going to describe the kind of photography that I do, why I do it. I'm going to talk a little bit about that image and what went in behind that image before I even got there. And then I'm going to talk about a project that I tried to start right as COVID hit. And so I haven't been able to work on it, and it just got postponed again because it's not safe to work in the field right now in how I'm going to describe to you this. So as a photographer, I studied journalism. I don't shoot street photography. I don't shoot old buildings. I don't shoot houses at night, all that kind of stuff. Every single thing I do, and I wrote this down because it's convoluted and embarrassing and probably egotistical. This is how I would describe the kinds of photography that I do. People-based, long-form, reality-based photography projects. And the reality-based comes in by me saying I am not orchestrating the people in my photographs. So even if I'm in their house and it's an intimate scenario where I'm photographing a family and I'm living in and out of their house for days at a time, I'm not telling them where to go. I'm not staging things like that. And a lot of documentary photography these days is staged because it can be done very, very quickly. Could be a portrait series, could be some other form of sort of staging so that projects can be completed really quickly. Mine are people-based. That exponentially increases your degree of difficulty. They're long-term. Sometimes I spend years at a time working on the same project. And they're reality-based, which means I can't orchestrate. So if I miss something, I have to wait around for it to happen again, or I just have to go cry in the bushes somewhere because I wasn't good enough and I missed it. So the picture that I talked about in Notes on Photography, which is this picture here, the backstory is how I got there, I guess. And this is what I forgot to mention because I thought, I've been doing this for a long time. I don't have to really think about it. It's just, I would call it the detective agency way of getting to a photograph. So the number one thing I had to do was, first of all, discover that this event actually was happening. Hey, who'd have thunk it? So I had to figure out that there was something called the Southern California Timing Association. And that, oh, by the way, the Southern California Timing Association are the people that do the land speed record, and they have 2 events a year, one in the spring, one in the fall. I was like, oh, step 1, discover that this story exists. Step 2, discover the organization. Step 3, discover the timing of the events and where they're held and whether or not I have access and I can get there. The next thing in my head was, do I need a credential to get into the event? And what I mean by credential is press credential. I studied journalism. I worked in journalism for years. And when you get a press credential, it means 2 things. It means 1, you have been trained, and 2, you have been vetted. And for people who are running organizations or big events or anyone, law enforcement, whoever, when they see a credential, it comes with weight. It comes with substance of saying, he's been trained, he's been vetted. So it makes a huge difference. Do I need one to get into the Southern California Timing Association? I don't know. I have to do the research. I'm emailing, I'm calling, I'm figuring this stuff out. Then when you get to the event, you realize, okay, there's a general area where the public can sort of line the racetrack, but there's also the pit area. What do I need to get in the pit area? Do I need a secondary credential? Do I need one of the officials to say, you're okay, you're not okay? then now you're inside the pit area. Now you have to really mind your P's and Q's and your behavior because you don't want to get tossed from the pit area. But I'm shooting with a Hasselblad with an 80 and a Leica with a 50 or 35. I've got to get close. I have to be right on top of people. So now I have to learn how to navigate being in that space. I have to be right up on the racer, right up on the pit crews. Can I do that? Who amongst the sea of racers looks like they would be okay with me photographing, and who looks very much like they don't want me around? Learning to navigate that space. This is part of the fun of why I love to do people-based projects. The downside of this is you could run into the wrong person. It can take forever. You can get booted from the pits. Some random official can say you don't have the right credential or the right badge. Even if it may not exist, he just doesn't want you there, so he boots you out. And then it's learning to get in to the area of critical focus and out before anybody is bothered. And that means being completely comfortable with your equipment, completely comfortable with moving and navigating as a professional image maker. If you're shy and sort of impish and in the background and not really sure what you're doing, they pick up on that. And when you come in and you can quickly get in, make a picture, and get out without bothering anyone, they will go, okay, he's legit. I don't have to worry about him. He's not going to distract us. He's not going to distract the racer or bump into the bike or whatever it is. And law enforcement does the same thing. When you show up on a spot news scene and you have to get right up with law enforcement and get in and get out with your photographs, they will know immediately if you know what you're doing. And if you do something stupid like step on a crime scene or go underneath the police tape or, you know, get blood on your shoe or whatever, they're going to remember that and go, this guy's a bozo and doesn't know what he's doing. So that's the story behind how I made that picture in the desert, was doing all that research ahead of time, figuring out the dates and times and locations, and also knowing that in the desert at that time of year, you've got about 30 minutes of decent light where you're going to get those long directional shadows, which I showed you in the image. And so I have to be in the right place at the right time with the right gear and be on my game to be able to work in that 30-minute time frame and get all the images I need. And so that's sort of the cool backstory, the logistical ladder that you have to climb to put yourself in a position to make these photographs. So next on this long and rambling mess, did I mention my dongle? Yes. It gets lonely in the van. So I want to tell you about how a story came about right as COVID hit. So I go to 2 years ago, I go to a holiday party and I'm putting out the vibe in my orange tux. Please tell me you know that movie reference. I'll be at the bar putting out the vibe. I go to this party and it's at someone's house I don't know. And again, I told you, I'm not super social. Like, this is not my first choice to go to holiday parties, but my wife will drag me to a holiday party every single night because she is excruciatingly social. It drives me crazy. I go to the party, I probably meet 20 people I don't know, including a couple who had moved to New Mexico from Hollywood, who worked in Hollywood, not as actors, but in production side. And they were actually quite famous in their genre, in their circles, for what they did in Hollywood movie production. They moved to New Mexico, but they moved to a tiny, very rural village that dates back to the 1500s, which is 99.9% local families with lineages that go all the way back to the 1500s. So this catches my eye. I'm like, a Caucasian couple from Hollywood moves to this little village. I'm like, that's interesting. And then the woman says to me, oh, by the way, I have a secondary job in the community, which is X. Now she has 100% of my attention because she has a job in the community that is incredibly important and demanding of respect. And she's a Caucasian person who moved from out of state and has this role, which has historically been the role of a male in the community, always has it. But now all of a sudden, here's a female from out of state who's not a local New Mexican woman who has this role. And I'm like, now I'm totally intrigued. And I said, wow, that is so incredible. I would love to come and photograph that. So now what I've done is just poke the hornet's nest. Now I've poked it. It's killer bees. They're Africanized. They're on my head. My head is swelling. I've got my EpiPen. It's not working because I have planted the seed that I want to come and photograph. And she goes, I don't know. I would have to check with the community. And I'm like, no problem. So a couple weeks goes by. We're emailing. I go up to see, my wife and I go up to see she and her husband. They're great. We hang out. We really like them. And then I keep saying, you know, I really want to try this project. She goes, okay, look, there is one day of the year that you could come and potentially meet all 65 families that are connected to this story. And I'm like, ding, 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 ding. Okay, whatever. And that date was March 21st. The problem was state of New Mexico locked down on the 12th. So all of it got canceled. No one could do it safely. This is when COVID had first arrived in the States and was really starting to explode. The same thing happened this year. They still can't do it. New Mexico's back on, or Santa Fe County's back on high risk. No one can do this. No one can do this project safely now, so it has to be postponed. But here's the thing. So this entire project exists in a 2.5 mile stretch of earth. That's it. That is so lovely and so wonderful to know that your entire project is within a 2.5 mile physical barrier. That's it. All I have to do is become intimate with every single thing in that 2.5 mile stretch. Now, the problem is 65 families. This is how you have to navigate this kind of thing. If you're doing reality-based, which means I can't just show up and say, I'm going to shoot portraits and line people up and bang, 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 and take off, right? You cannot just show up and start shooting because they don't know me and they don't trust me, and they probably shouldn't trust me because they don't know me. So I have to get there. I have to meet the folks. So what I would have done on March 21st is I would have shown up with one camera, one lens, and an audio recorder, and zero expectations of using either. I would have shown up with her as my liaison, and I would have made my way down the 2.5 miles, and I would have been introducing myself to as many people that as possible that would tolerate me. And oh, by the way, you have to speak Spanish. You don't speak Spanish, don't bother. And oh, by the way, you have to be prepared for them, even though they only speak Spanish, to not speak to you in Spanish until you have gained enough trust where they will respect you and then communicate with you in Spanish. So let's back up a little bit and recap. Holiday party, putting out the vibe, drinking myself in a corner. I meet a couple very intriguing, very intelligent, fun people. She tells me about her role in the community. I think that's interesting. I suggest that this would be a good photo project. She says, hey, this might be interesting for the community to have this as a document. Let me check. She says, I think it's okay. You should come up on this day. We'll begin the introduction process. COVID blows it all apart. 65 families, 2.5 miles. I see the edges and borders of my project, and I just want to start. But here's a couple of things that you have to realize. To do a project like this, 65 families, that means there are 65 houses, basically. I need to get in those houses. I need to be with the families. Number one step is, this is all private property. And in the American West, if you violate private property, and I spending time as a kid growing up in Wyoming and watch people get chased off properties at gunpoint, people in the West take it seriously. You do not ever walk on, and this is for you Instagrammers out there, do not ever go on private property in the West unless you want to take some lead, if you know what I mean, because people take it very seriously. So I have to get permission to be on the properties, and that comes from establishing who I am, what I'm doing, and why I'm there, and realizing that some people are going to say, no, I don't want you around here. So now that 2.5 mile section has pieces that I can't access. So I've got to navigate those and then get the trust of the families to say, look, I have an understanding of who this guy is and what he's trying to do, and maybe we want to play along, and we can tell, he can record audio stories of our history and our family here and all that stuff. You cannot post a single thing online. If you post on Instagram or you do a YouTube film about this and they find out about it, you are persona non grata, and you might as well do not go back to the community. They will not take kindly to that. That is a breach of trust that cannot be restored. So if sharing and gaining and getting something from every single picture you do is part of your game, then I wouldn't bother with this kind of photography. If for some reason you love to torture yourself and you love to work for months at a time with basically making no progress, this is for you, my friends. So that's what I would have done. Now, this was not my first rodeo with this exact kind of project in New Mexico. And this is, I promise, the last thing I'm going to say. Maybe. A few years prior, I had been up north of Santa Fe, and I had observed these two Huichol Indians along the side of the road. They were in full Huichol garb, playing guitar by themselves in the middle of nowhere. There was not a single person in the audience. There was no audience. They were just along a country road, and I looked over and I was like, that almost looks like two Huichol guys playing guitar. And it was. And I got out, and I started just hanging out and trying to talk to them. And so they wandered down to this gas station, and I went to the gas station, And a bunch of people from the gas station came out and they got in a little huddle and they were looking at me and pointing, not understanding that I spoke Spanish. And they were like, who is this guy? What's he doing here? And why is he here? And half of the people said, we got to boot him out of here. And this other guy came out and said, I think he's fine. Let's just leave him alone. And then I said something in Spanish, which made them realize that I could understand their conversation. And they all started laughing and everything was good. But I didn't make any pictures for the first 3 or 4 times that I went to this project because it didn't feel right. It felt like I was taking something way too early without putting the time in. And they still didn't know who I was. And I don't speak Huichol or any of the native dialects. My Spanish is okay. It's not great. So there was a little bit of navigation there that I had to get better at. But slowly over time, I built some trust with them. And that was when the pictures started to happen. But to do that, I basically was gaining trust of one person at a time. At one point, the dueña, the woman who owns this huge piece of property, came out with a chair in the parking lot, put it down to do nothing other than stare at me for 24 hours. She would not talk to me. She would not address me. When I tried to address her in Spanish, she would not respond in Spanish. And then 24 hours later, after observing me for the whole time, she finally said, I think you're okay. You're fine. You can have access here. That's what really opened up the doors. Now, what I did to reciprocate for these people allowing me in their lives, and look, these people, there were things going on that weren't necessarily on the up and up. And they knew that I was going to see these things and potentially photograph these things. So they, in turn, were putting trust in me that I was not going to blab. And I said to them, I know what's happening. It's not of interest to me. It's not part of my story. I know it's happening. It's over there. I'm going to compartmentalize, but I'm over here doing this thing because this is what's interesting to me. And they were like, good on you, buddy. The other thing I did, and I swear to God, this is the last thing I'm going to say. I went back to my house because I had I'm all over the place here, right? We're having a barbecue. We're eating. We're buying like 30 packs of Busch Light and just bam, bam, bam. And so I'm photographing this Mexican immigrant farmer who'd come in and he's looking at my cameras and he's like, I never had a photograph of me. And I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, we didn't have cameras where I came from in Mexico. My family didn't have any recording of themselves. And he goes, I've never had a picture of myself. And I was like, you're kidding me. And I'd already photographed him like 50 times. So I went home, I got out my giant enormous inkjet printer and I made a box of 17 by 22 high-end fine art inkjet prints, each in a perfect sleeve in a box to take back to the community. I drove it up there. I pull in the parking lot. They're getting ready for a fiesta. More Busch Light. Bang, 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 Busch Light. And so I pull over. I put the box on the hood of my truck. I open the box and I pick up the first print and it's of that guy. And I'm holding it like this. And he comes, he's a big dude, right? He has not skipped any Busch Light in the last 30 years. And so he comes across the parking lot like Usain Bolt to get his print. And he's picking it up. And he grabs it. And he's so excited. He's holding it up in the air to show the rest of the community, which of course in about 18 seconds ruins the entire print. It's got creases in it and it bends and folds. But he's so thrilled that he has this thing. And now the whole community's like, holy cow, he's brought prints. And then the wind came up and it blew the box of prints off the trunk, the hood of my truck into a field, a cornfield like that had just been plowed, but there was no corn in it. And it just tumbled like this and the prints just scattered all over the landscape. And then everyone ran to like pick them up and they were all basically ruined, but no one cared because they were like, holy cow, these are prints and these are prints of us. That's the kind of thing that I'm telling you. I think for a lot of you out there, doing this kind of work is probably not fun. You probably have no interest in doing this kind of work. But there's a small percentage of you that do. And what I'm saying is the relationships and the experiences that come from doing this kind of work is unlike any other photography I have ever done. You will build lifelong friendships and you will have experiences that simply go so far beyond your expectations because humans are unpredictable. We come with the good, the bad, and the ugly. And those people, once you're in the community and you've had these experiences and people start to gain your trust, they will begin to come to you and say, have you thought about X, Y, and Z? You should meet my cousin. My cousin does X, Y, and Z, and he lives 5 miles down the road. Let's go. Let's get some Busch Light first. But let's go to my cousin's house. And your story, like an onion, peels and it gets better and deeper and more complete. But what you have to realize is the time required to do this kind of work. and the things that you have to learn to navigate that have nothing to do with your photography equipment. I've done films and talks and workshops and interviews and lectures about using single cameras and single lenses and just focusing on one thing and focusing on the photographs. There is no other way to do this work. If you are sitting in front of these people fumbling with equipment or changing lenses, or you have, oh, better yet, your photo safari vest packed with stuff, and you've got a 70 to 200 and a 20 to 35 and a 35 to 70, and you got 3 bodies and boosters and lenses, and you look like this Megatron Japanese monster coming out of to people to photograph. They just go, whoa, 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 whoa. It's a bit much, my friend. And so tranquilo, just relax a little bit. And so having a single camera and a lens that you are absolutely, utterly familiar with, because remember, and here's the big separator, reality-based, no orchestration. You will sit in places where the pieces on the chessboard in front of you, everything is in place except one thing. And without that one thing, that picture does not work. And you have to sit and wait and wait. It could be an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours where you are not shooting and you're petrified to move, because if you move, you're going to blow the whole thing. And if that one piece does move, it's going to be an insane photo, and you have to wait. And then 3 hours goes by and it doesn't move, or it moves in the wrong direction, and you go, I just wasted 3 hours. The online community of photography does not want to wait, because it's a race. It's an arms race for subscriptions and likes, and it's very tricky. And I totally understand why a lot of these folks shoot inanimate things or street things or whatever, because it's fast and quick, and you can have success and then move on. Again, don't know why I chose to do this kind of work, but I did, and I feel good for it, because overall the experiences I've had over the last 30 years have been pretty overwhelmingly positive, and the relationships that I've made, and just driving around a place like New Mexico where I've done these projects, the memories that come back from these places and these people, and I know that I can stop by at any point. 5 years after a project, I can pull up and they look at me, they remember me, they know me, we have dialogue. I bring little bottles of Bombay Sapphire gin to a guy north of town whose 95-year-old mother loves Bombay Sapphire gin, and she's 95 and looks 55 and is amazing and smokes like a chimney, and I have Christmas at their house. That's the kind of stuff that comes from human-based, long-form, reality-based documentary projects. If you haven't done something like this, know that the first time could be really rocky and you could make mistakes. But if you're honest with people, forthright, upfront, patient, kind, accommodating, you can still do this kind of work. So hopefully that was helpful. If anyone is still listening, I mean, have a Busch Light. Just relax and celebrate, because you made it this far. We did cover my dongle a couple of times. I'm alone in the van. It just happens. I don't know. I'm not proud of it. Thanks for tuning in, watching whatever we're doing here, and hopefully that was helpful.